Greetings one and all, we're going to continue our discussion regarding the story for WoW post Eternal Palace and the release of N'Zoth. There's one particular thing I want to talk about. Now, for those of you that didn't see part 1 of this video regarding the story up until Eternal Palace for BFA, this is very much a story-driven thing. We're not talking about technicalities, we're not talking about community perception or things like that. We're just talking from a story point of view. Where are we and where are we going to go? Now, one of the things that leads, interestingly enough, from this is the whole conversation of factions. Now, I don't want to talk about how it's going to work in terms of gameplay, i.e. being able to do dungeons together and raids together. What I want to talk about is how is that going to work in terms of the story. And the reason I find the story so interesting and I think it's so important, which a lot of people dismiss and go, I don't really care about the story, it doesn't really interest me. Everything stems from the story. Okay, the story is the foundation that WoW is built upon. All the things that we have, that we do, that we can play, the classes, everything come from this story. So it's very interesting in terms of if you try to create a faction system that's different to what we have, then you're going to fundamentally change a lot of what we have as a story and therefore change a lot of very big keystones that everything's built upon. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible. By no means is it impossible. And in fact, there are some really interesting ways that they could go. Now, the most obvious and the one that's been touted by most YouTube channels and news outlets and forum and such is simply we realise that we always have these common threats that are horrific and horrendous and we always fight each other, and then we realise we should really work together. We become super best friends, we fight whatever this big evil is, be it Sargeras, Arthas, whatever, and then we go our separate ways, fight each other again, the next big evil comes up, and so on and so forth. This time we're going to realise that we should really just constantly work together. We're going to get rid of the last stumbling block in that, which is Sylvanas, and then after that, Bane and Anduin can be super best friends. Bane can lead the Horde, Anduin can lead the Alliance, and we can all skip into the distance happily. That is the kind of the way we're looking at the moment, potentially what they're going to do. Easy for me to say what they're going to do coming up. But story-wise, I see several issues of this. Now, we're not going to go into who should be leader of the Horde, who should be the war chief. God forbid we're going to go, it should be a democratic council selected by the leaders of each faction. God, no. Don't do that. The Alliance didn't even do that. Anduin, potentially, yes, he's the King of Stormwind, but he's not the leader of the Alliance. He should have been elected by the others. Whether it would have been a unanimous vote, they never showed it. He was just, immediately his father died, he was made the King of Stormwind, and he became the leader of the Alliance. Yeah, intriguing by that. But anyway, that's a side issue that we should talk about at the time. Now, the biggest issues I see to that kind of utopian vision would be, 1, Tyrian Illyria. Still very much anti-Horde. They are from the old school. If you ever played Warcraft 3, you will know the Alliance is very much depicted as being quite racist at its core. Maybe not from the top, but its core and its rank and file, its generals, they are extremely racist. It's what pushes Kel'Thas into going down the route of partnering with Illidan and then going even further than that. But it's that racism, that distrust of outsiders, other races, that was what was at the core of it. The idea was that even though the Horde was seen as barbaric, at its heart it was pure. The Alliance was noble, but at its heart was systemically quite racist. But it banded together to fight the greater evil, which was the original Horde. On the flip side, you are also going to have orcs that remember the internment camps. The stories would have been passed down about how the orcs came across and they, wiped out huge swathes of the human empires, and then they were defeated and they were captured and they were put in these internment camps and they were treated like animals. Those stories are going to continue. Yes, there's both sides to the argument, but those stories will continue. You will have, again, on the Horde side, institutional racism that's just been taught throughout the years. Now, I understand, WoW may not want to tackle that because it's just a kid's game and all this kind of thing, but it is there. Now, I haven't even come to the big one because I know most of you are sat there screaming going, come on Grim, there's a really obvious one that you haven't even picked yet. And that is the elves. What are you going to say to the elves? How is Andor going to turn and say we are now super best friends with the Horde? And the elves are just going to go, cool, okay, that's not a problem. They burnt down everything we ever known. We're now basically a dying race because of everything that the Horde did. And we're just now super best friends with them. No. Then again, on the flip side, you've got the Forsaken. Yes, there was a Forsaken Council created, but at no point did they want to take power from Sylvanas. They wanted to just maintain the status quo. They wanted to maintain the general running of the Forsaken and Undercity while Sylvanas was in Orgrimmar. She was beloved by many of the Forsaken as being their queen. And now she's been killed off by other members of the Horde and the Alliance. How are they going to feel? There's lots of different factions in this. Again, is Gen going to be that super cool? Now, I will say that I would have loved to have seen that dynamic back a little while ago. Unfortunately, Gen was the wolf was gone, and they neutered him down to a puppy because in Before the Storm, and I spoke about this in the previous video, he is very much against the Forsaken and Sylvanas, and he can't understand why Andrew wants to go through with this idea of the Forsaken and the humans meeting up and potentially some sort of alliance forming and peace coming from that. Gen is very much against it. And then he stands there and he's like, do you know what, Anduin? Do you know what? This is a beautiful thing. It's wonderful. You're right. The only person that needs to die is Sylvanas. And then everything's just great and fantastic. And I'm just super happy with everything. And that's what they did to Gen's character. So Gen's now okay with, potentially the Horde and the Alliance becoming super best friends, as long as certain people aren't involved in it. Sylvanas. But it feels to me a lot more like they're trying to do a soft reset. Because I don't think this whole faction thing works unless they go the bulldozer route, which is where they ignore characters that just kind of don't work for them. Illyria, kind of just push her out the way. Tyrillian, kind of push him out the way. What's Prophet Velen going to say? Well, we haven't even seen him. Don't worry about Velen. He's fine. What about Furid and Tyrande going to say, we don't really care about the elves. Don't worry about them. We'll just get them another tree somewhere. And if that's the case, and a lot of people are going to be saying, yeah, but you just don't want peace. We want to be able to just hug each other and it'll be lovely and it'll be great. And it's not the case. What I want is a well-implemented story that works. I would love it if you had this core faction in the middle, which Anduin and whoever was watching for the Horde are friends and everything's working great and fine. And then you've got this fringe faction of the Alliance and you've got this fringe faction of the Horde that will never see eye to eye. They will always have issues against each other. And there is no good, there is no evil. They just have their root issues as to why they will never want to work with the other side. And that makes some real intrigue because the vast majority, they're going to want to get along. They want to be part of this, new conglomerate, this new organisation that wants to work together. And so they're going to have to go underground. And that leaves all sorts of Game of Thrones-ish intrigue and plotting and working against each other. And if any of you did the Rogue Legion Hall, where you walk into the shop in Dalaran, you sort of show your medallion and you'd open up the side door. All of a sudden, you've got those sort of things. Let's say, I'm going to pick something else completely out of the air now. Guild Order Halls. If you did a guild hall where all your guildies can meet, but you've decided that your guild faction is not going to be open. You're not going to be one of these that you're going to accept Alliance and Horde, or vice versa. No, you're going to be a pure Horde or a pure Alliance. Well, then you might be one of these that has to, rather than having your giant guild hall in the middle of Orgrimmar, in the middle of Stormwind, you might say, no. We're literally going to be down a little side alley. You have to show this medallion, the symbol of the Horde or the symbol of the Alliance. And this door gets opened to you. And you kind of go down these steps and you're in the basements, you're in the sewers because you have to hide your organisation. That's really interesting to me. That's a fantastic way to go. And it also opens up some new, really interesting quest lines because you can have 3 factions in the same area, all with intertwining quest lines. So, for instance, let's say my Horde, the original Horde, we'll call them the original Horde and the original Alliance and the Care Bears. Yeah, you can tell what side I'm on. The original Horde, you're told, look, there's such and such happening here. The Care Bears are trying to create a farming area here. We need to stop that. We need to stop their encroachment here. So we're going to scorch earth this area. We don't want it to happen. So the Horde go in and we start burning the fields and scaring farmers away and stuff like that. The Care Bear group is told there's bandits or something happening near here. We need you to go over there and find out what the hell's going on. Just patrol the area, protect the farmers, find them and bring them back. And then the Secret Alliance faction, the original Alliance faction, they're told there's some dodgy Horde guys there. We knew the Horde were wrong. We knew they were bad. They're killing farmers. They're looting and burning. Go there and stop them from doing it. Go and kill them. It's exactly the same area, but you got 3 intriguing storylines that could intertwine throughout the whole course of the area. Now, I've gone off on a little bit of a tangent, but to go back to that original question about I just want war and violence, and I don't want the factions to come together. As I said before, it's not true. I don't mind. My issue is if they try and implement something the same way they implemented the storyline for BFA, which was supposedly exactly what I want. It was a war storyline, but it was implemented so poorly. Now, we've all said Legion, something should happen between Gen and Sylvanas. They obviously had a storyline that they wanted to implement. Instead, it just ended in capturing towers. And then all of a sudden, we're at a full-scale war. It didn't make sense, and it ruined everything that they set up. Everything that came afterwards was tainted by this failure. That's what I have an issue with. It's story, it's development, it's these characters that we have loved for years. More than 15 years we have loved these characters. We have been immersed in their world. And for all the faults we can say with Warlords of Draenor, at least it was the story that drove it. It was story driven. And everything else came from that. And yeah, okay, we can go, oh god, time travel and everything else, and that was awful. And yeah, the garrison and the world stuff wasn't great, but I was lucky enough to be raiding at that time. So it wasn't that bad an expansion for me. But I can understand for many it was not a pleasant experience. But at least the story was there. The Garrosh storyline was actually really good. I really liked the Garrosh storyline. Yeah, the time walking is a bit janky, but I get that. But what we have with BFA is these ideas, these things they wanted to implement. And I have no doubt down the road what they have is brilliantly conceived. But they needed a war. But they implemented it so poorly that everything now is tainted. And they're constantly playing catch up. So if we are going to have this idea of a new homogenous faction, learn from BFA and learn from everything that we've got around us now. Every film, TV series, whatever else. Don't try and drive your agenda. Drive the story, and then everything else will follow, and we'll buy into it. We'll buy into whatever this new thing is you want to happen, the change in the world, but you have to make it make sense within the confines of the story. Make that good, and we'll buy it, and we'll go with it, and we'll run with it, and we'll love it. Ruin it, and you'll have more BFA on your hands, and you'll have more people clamoring to go play Classic. Woo! That is me done, ladies and gentlemen. I will talk to you all later, as I need to go lay down now. Have a good one.